All right, so now we're going to get into looking at the athlete and the wheelchair, and it's a very systematic approach here. And so, what are some systems that we utilize when looking at a wheelchair? Well, one, this kind of faded picture of a wheelchair in the back, a very standard hospitalized chair, is not what we're talking about when we're talking about wheelchairs and adapted athletes or parasport athletes and wheelchairs. These wheelchairs are very highly developed for specific sports and very individualized for each athlete. And so the athlete is paired with the wheelchair and what sports they're going to be utilizing it. It's then fitted for that specific athlete. Then any strapping or stability techniques that are needed to make sure that that athlete feels secure in their wheelchair and gets the most kind of movement within their wheelchair. And then it's also going to look at their skills and techniques when building a specific wheelchair. And that really creates the most kind of optimal performance system. So the selection is really based upon the sport and also the individual's kind of dimensions and their functions. And all of that is essential for success. So this picture here over to the right is really just a very standard multi-sport or all-sport wheelchair. And so wheelchairs want to be as light as possible and really rigid. And if they're rigid and they aren't foldable or collapsible, that means every energy expenditure by the athlete is going to go right back through the wheelchair frame and hopefully increase efficiency. And so for a standard wheelchair, really we're looking at your two large wheels, and they are going to have what's called a camber. So as you can see, where the athlete sits, the wheels are tilted inward, typically 15 to 20 degrees. That creates a larger base on the bottom, which increases stability and also decreases the opportunity for the wheelchair and the athlete to tip over or flip out of the wheelchair. And most will have casters, which are their small wheels in the front, typically two of them, and also a fifth wheel in the back, which prevents the athlete from popping their wheelchair up, doing a wheelie, or potentially falling backwards when having to really push hard to do a sprint in a wheelchair. And so the size of the main wheels and the position of the seat and the casters are really based upon the function, again, of the athlete and what the specific sport is, right? So a wheelchair basketball chair is going to be a bit different than a tennis wheelchair compared to, for sure, a quad rugby wheelchair, right? And so this is more so a multi-purpose wheelchair. All right, here is a racing chair. So this is for our track and running athletes. So we can see it's very different than the all-purpose sport wheelchair, right? We see that wheelchairs, even sport wheelchairs, can have what's called a dump, which is a decrease in the seat in the back of it, kind of creating this V here, which is going to increase stability and support. And this frame is very light and rigid, called kind of a T frame, right? And it has this front wheel, much larger than a caster wheel. And the push rims are actually much smaller, which is going to increase efficiency of being able to push the chair faster, quicker, right? So push rim is going to be a bit different. And you can lock in this front caster and maintain it for propulsion straight, or you can unlock it and be able to turn this front caster. And there also are brakes within a racing chair, depending on whether you're going to be doing a quick track race or cross country or a marathon race. So each is kind of individualized based upon the individual. Some will have foot pads down here for their feet to be placed, and it's really just built individually for each athlete. So when we talk about training for individuals that are in a wheelchair, one, there are specific cardio machines that are available within some fitness centers, and they allow our wheelchair athletes to be able to work on cardiovascular endurance while staying in their wheelchair, or if they'd like to transfer out as well. So here, because their legs aren't able to move like on a treadmill or elliptical, they're going to be pumping their arms to be able to work cardiovascularly and increase endurance. So you could do propulsion in many different ways. There are training rollers where you actually put your wheelchair up into rollers, very similar to a roller system for a bike that you would put on and put your back wheel into the rollers and be able to ride your own bike. So you can put your wheelchair onto that. This is an arm crank ergometer here, right? So cranking their arms. And then there are also upper body exercise systems as well. So you could just think about a lat pull down, right? But one that you could remove the seat, an individual in a wheelchair could pull their wheelchair up, put on their brakes, and then reach up and be able to utilize that. So one, we have to make sure to really consider injury and risks and not to overuse the shoulder, because that is also how they ambulate and move themselves, right? So if they're in a wheelchair and they utilize that to locomote throughout the day, we want to make sure that we keep the shoulders strong and don't overuse them or injure them, because that will decrease their independence. So looking at fitness from a performance stance, looking at their movement, flexibility, range of motion, coordination, agility, power, acceleration, speed, and also balance is important. So strength and conditioning is definitely something that our athletes in wheelchairs should be working on and developing strength and power. Also maintaining or increasing flexibility and range of motion by also making sure to look at injury and risk prevention as well. So working on muscular balance from both antagonist muscles, right? We do a lot of pushing. We're working the chest muscles, making sure that we're also working the back muscles equally, looking at posture as well, and then also looking at pre and post exercise stretching. So some other systems to kind of consider is for sure strapping. If an individual, based upon their disability, has less muscle fiber firing within their core to stabilize their body or to right their body back up after leaning forward or to the side, they might need additional stability, which is provided by strapping. So this is very common in quad rugby, which the picture over here shows some athletes in quad rugby chairs, where as a quad rugby athlete, most of them are quadriplegia, and so they have limited function of their core and muscles to kind of right themselves. And so we see strapping around the knees to really lock them into the wheelchair, and then also around their waist as well. So we can see a corner of a belt here going around the waist, and the higher the back seat of wheelchairs, the more support and stability that wheelchair is providing. Typically, you can assume that a wheelchair that has a much lower backrest means that that athlete or individual has more function of their stability within their core and chest. Higher the backrest, the less function they have. Also, orthotics or prosthetics may also be utilized. AFOs, ankle foot orthotics, can also be seen. So an increase with strapping and really making sure that this athlete is really as tight to the chair as possible increases volumes of action, right? So if they're able to kind of move their body side to side, that's going to respond in an equal action within their wheelchair. Also, it aids in any kind of tipping or standing of the chair as well. So as skill development occurs, we need to be looking at increasing in strapping or potentially fading some strapping as well, just to be looking at skill development and strategies within each different sport. So kind of a last topic we're going to be looking at is transfers. So transferring in to a wheelchair and out of a wheelchair is really important. So one, if a wheelchair has brakes, which most everyday wheelchairs don't, most sport wheelchairs don't, But some individuals do have brakes on their wheelchair. So if so, we should put our brakes on. If not, we should make sure that the wheelchair is kind of positioned in a place that they can stay, or we could ask someone to be of assistance and kind of stand behind that wheelchair. Picture to the right is a sliding board, which can be used to assist in transferring. Typically, every transfer, there's a gap between where the individual is sitting and getting onto their wheelchair. So this transfer board allows an individual to slide across, or it kind of covers that gap if for some reason something happens. There's also a gait stability belt that can be utilized. A lot of time we see this in rehab, which really a support person can kind of hold that around their waist and to help with transferring. I've definitely grabbed onto people's belt loops that have ripped or pockets, trying to find something to grab while helping them transfer if they slip, and just ripping their pants or pockets or a belt loop. So a gait belt can be of assistance, but most of the time post-rehab, most individuals really don't utilize that anymore. And you can provide a 2-person or 1-person lift when needed for individuals that may have less function when transferring. We're always looking to try to increase independence. And again, as always with any disability, we should be asking if an individual needs any assistance and not assuming. So that's really important. Each person in a wheelchair will really know how they like their wheelchair to be set up anytime transferring. So it's really important if we're providing assistance that we're not moving the chair or setting the chair up to what we believe is the best location. Most individuals will be able to set that up themselves. We're just going to be there spotting and providing any assistance that they might be asking for. All right, so we're going to look at 2 clips of just some really cool videos that are out there. This one is called The Best of Men. It's a movie about the beginnings of the Paralympics. And then that next video we're going to look at is Murder Ball, which if you haven't seen it, definitely see it. It's a documentary about quad rugby. All right, let's get looking at these 2.
I don't know. University, maybe?
No. That wouldn't take me. There's this home that my dad's arranged.
There you will have a good view of the lawns.
My father
I
says...
cannot make it any plainer, William. If you do not look after yourself, your father will. Do you want that? If you don't decide what you want to do with your life, not your parents', then you will be an eternal child. If you do not find your voice and your balls, we will all have wasted our time. Do not ask me what you do now. Tell me.
I don't know.
Then I can't help you. Good, yeah?
I'd like to raise the subject of the spinal unit extracurricular activities.
Extracurricular? I haven't brought my dictionary.
Your ridiculous national games.
Ah, yes. Good news travels fast.
What's your objection, Mr. Colonel?
Well, where do I start? What is the point of it? Wheelchairs racing across the lawns? And croquet and...
Only javelin and archery is this year.
This year?
You must have heard about the Olympics in London, yeah?
Bloody hell.
Why not?
Because they're cripples.
Not in the Olympics themselves, alongside. Parallel too. For now.
He is mad. You know they call him Popper, don't you? That's how much respect they have for him.
How many patients will be attending?
Perhaps 15?
The National Games will be a laughingstock. National implies the best. The national cricket team, the national rugby team. What are these people the best of?
The best of men.
For God's sake.
Yes, indeed, Mr. Cowan. For God's sake. I find this interrogation insulting.
Gentlemen.
He'll be shipping in a bloody brass band next. We've already had the Windmill Girls.
What is it that so offends you?
Yes, that's the word. It offends me. It does. This is a hospital. We have respectable people here visiting sick relatives. We have children visiting their parents.
I don't understand.
It's not pleasant. I'm sorry, but it's not. People in wheelchairs, withered limbs, damaged bodies.
Now I understand.
I'm not going to a geriatric home.
They're not all old. There's a little girl in a basket
I
chair.
can't live alone. Why not? I can dress myself, bathe myself, wipe my own bum.
There's no need to talk like that. And what happens if you fall out of that thing?
Thing? My chair. Wynn's repairing cars for me. He's made a hoisting so we can lean into the engine.
Wynn has a wife. He isn't living alone.
We don't know what you want.
To be my own man. Live my own life, wherever I am. Be part of the world.
We hide them away. Is this it? Is this what you say? Corporal Bowen, with a bit of humor as a wife who loves him. Corporal James, with a longing to teach history. David Darkus, who plays the baboon like an angel. And William Heath, who has fought longer and harder to survive than you will ever have to. We are ashamed of them.
I'm not saying that.
No.
You are not honest enough to say it.
I'm sorry, William, but we can't allow that. Yeah, we've got a room waiting for
I'm
you.
20, Dad. Being like this doesn't make me 6 again. I'm an adult.
We've written our wills. Everything we have, we leave to you in trust.
You don't trust me with a checkbook. Just bug it off, Dad, because I don't want any of it.
Delusions of grandeur.
I will have my parallel Olympics, Mr. Cowan.
Oh, gets better and better.
I will. And the rest of you can go to the devil.
Yes, very adult.
All right, let's check out our next one.
I don't...
When I was 16, I was in a car accident.
I was out on the back porch, and he was trying to pick a fight with me, and he picked me up and threw me off the deck, and it snapped my spinal cord.
My buddy spun out, threw me into a canal, and I spent 13 and a half hours and pulled onto a branch until somebody found me. It used to be called Murder Ball, but you can't really market Murder Ball to corporate sponsors. We have a reputation of always winning gold.
This is ours for the taking, boys.
They're gonna be talking all kinds of trash.
Yeah, baby, yeah. Anytime, big boy.
You guys are really out there going after each other.
What you can! Attack, attack, attack! Everyone's like, what's your approach, Scott? How do you work these women? And I'm like, the more pitiful I am, the more the women like me.
I went and spoke at a rehab hospital, and there's this young guy. We couldn't get him out of the rugby chair when it was time to leave. He's just like, this is great. I want to go hit stuff. People say some of the dumbest things. Like, I'll be loading groceries into my car, and people are like, do you need help in your car? It's like, well, I wouldn't have come to the grocery store if I couldn't get back in my car.
Remember Ocean's 11? Remember that little Asian guy that gets in that box?
I've actually done more in a chair than I did able work.
We're not going for a hug. We're going for a email.
It's unreal. It's a whole different aspect of being in a wheelchair.
All right, definitely 2 videos. You can check out more about adapted sports, and we will be talking more about them in class. So check out Murder Ball or Best of Men. Thanks.